Hello everyone, my name is Mustafa Mohamed Boche, and in today's tutorial we are going to look at how we can use socket.io to create a simple chat application. I have already executed this application, but then I didn't create a video tutorial, and since my subscribers are asking for it, that is exactly what I'm doing. So I'm going to walk you through the end product of the application, and as you can see I have my Chrome browser open here, and I have the Firefox browser also open over here. And so the Chrome browser is representing, for instance, a different client, and the Firefox browser is also representing another client. So right over here, I can go to my Chrome browser and then say, hey, and you realize that as soon as I send the message, the person at the Firefox browser also received the message, and that person can also respond by saying hi, right? And the conversation can go back and forth in that kind of manner. And so I think the most important thing is for us to focus on the code, which is what everyone is requesting. And I must also add that I'm not going to actually walk you through everything, in the sense that I'm actually going to focus on the JavaScript and not the CSS. That is what I mean. So I have my HTML set up already. I'm going to create a GitHub link, and I'm going to link it in the description for you to have it. So I'm not going to touch the HTML. I'm also not going to touch the CSS. We are only going to remove, for instance, this from there, and also maybe this from there, and we'll create the entire application from scratch. But the most important thing, or where our main focus is going to be, is right over here, right? So our main focus is going to be here, and I'll be explaining what is happening to everyone. So with that said, I'm going to delete these files that I have, and I'm going to start the entire project all over again. So I'm going to come over here and delete everything with the exception of the public file. So first and foremost, let me stop my server. Yes. Let me go back and delete everything. Sorry. Forgive me, I have cold, so that's the little thing I have to deal with. So now we are going to create everything from scratch. Obviously, our public folder contains our HTML and our CSS, and as I mentioned, our main interest is not over there. So let's start a new application. Sorry, give me a minute. The entry is going to be app.js, the command getter. Right, so the first thing that we are going to do is install the our Express. We're also going to install the socket.io, and I also want to install NodeMon. So there you go. So while this installation is going on, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to create the app.js file, app.js, and I'm also going to create our route, a folder called route, and inside our route I'll create a file called index.js. Sorry. And over here I'm going to define the route, right? So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So So over here I am requiring the path because I'm coming. I'll quickly explain this, but just bear with me right over here, right? So let me go over here and also set the app. So I'm going to require the HTTP module. So require the HTTP module. Obviously, I'm also going to require our Express. We are going to execute our Express. And I'm also going to require over here, I may require the path again. Sorry, let's set this to 3000. Okay. Just give me some few minutes. I will explain all of this to you, like in a minute. Okay, so since we have our NodeMon installed, I'm going to create this script, and we are going to use that to actually run our application. I'm coming. I'm going to explain everything to you guys in just a minute. Okay. All right. So if you are wondering why these two scripts, obviously when we push our file, right, this code that we are creating, right, this project basically, if we push our project to a server end, to the server end, this is what is going to execute, right? The npm is actually going to run this particular script, right? But for development purposes, we are using NodeMon to track the changes of our app. So that is why I have this particular script over here, which is the dev, to actually run this, and that is what we are going to use. Now when we come to, for instance, our app .js file right over here, we know that we need our express, right? So we've required our express. We've also required, when you're using socket.io, you need to use the HTTP module. So we've also required the HTTP module, and right over here we require the path, and we are also requiring the socket.io. And from the socket.io, we are actually going to grab the server. That is what we're actually going to do. So you realize that we grab the server from here, and what are we doing? After creating our local server, which we are going to listen on using the port, we actually have to pass that particular server that we created, which is the Express server, to the socket.io server to listen on actions, right? So right now we have this socket.io set up, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say io.on. So whenever we use the on, it's like an event, how do you call it? It's like calling an event, right? So we are listening on a particular event. So we want to listen on connection, right? So whenever, for instance, someone connects, they are going to get a socket, and that is a function. So for instance, let's say console log connected, something like that, right? So whenever we have any client that connects to our backend and successfully connects to our socket.io server, we want to log to the console connect, right? Now, you realize that I created this route, this index right over here. I created this route, and what this route basically is doing is it's going to serve as the this index.html file, and inside this index.html file, this is all that we have inside it. So I have this CSS file that I've created, which is right over here. I'm going to make that available in the GitHub repo that I'm going to share the link with you. And I'm also requiring this script file, which is the script right over here. But before doing that, we also need to require the socket.io, right, JS file inside our index file. So that is what I'm doing right over there. So I'm first requiring the socket.io file, which you can actually get from this particular link, and it's inside our node module. It's inside our node module. So if we go to, for instance, the socket.io, then we go to client, we're actually going to see that particular file, which is what we are requiring right over here. So let me collapse this. And sorry. So we've required the socket.io file, and we've also required the scripts file. So inside the scripts file, what I'm basically doing is I'm calling the socket.io right over here, right? And let me comment this, and also let me comment that. So when we connect to, for instance, our backend, let's say socket.on, sorry, we want to listen on connection, right? So if we successfully connect to the backend, we want to console log client end connected, right? Client end connected. So you realize that at the backend, we are logging, which is, where is it? At the app, at the backend, we're actually logging connected, right? So let's say connected to backend, right? Connected to backend. So now what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to run the server, and I hope nothing is wrong, right? So everything is working perfectly. So that means if I hit this particular URL, okay, so we're having some errors. We're having some error. Let me see. Okay. So let's go back to the, okay, right, I understand. So right over here, we have to also include our route, which we haven't. So I'm going to do app.use. We're just going to use this particular endpoint. So that means anytime we hit the our index page, which is the / we want to get the, we want to save this particular file, right? So this is actually going to serve as the HTML file, right? So if we save this, and we go back and then we refresh, we get our page, right? If I go back to, for instance, and realize that it says connected to backend. Now, if we go to the front end, and then for instance we check the console, let me try again. Well, okay. Let me check this particular script. Good. So I'm supposed to rather use the connect instead of connection. The connection is actually for the backend. So now let's go through the dynamics. Right now we can actually see that. Let me reduce the size of this. Right now we can actually see that our client end is actually connecting to our application, right? It's connecting to our application successfully. And at our backend, at our server end, we're also getting the message which says, connected to backend. So it means we have the socket.io at the backend sync with the front end application. So now, when you want to send, for instance, a message from one end to another, right? So basically, we'll take it that this client is also connected, right? The Chrome browser client is connected, and the Firefox browser is also connected. So now, if I want to send, for instance, a message from the Firefox browser to the Chrome browser, I may have to come over here, and inside the script, this is at the client end, right? Inside the script, obviously we don't need it, so we can comment this out, but I'm going to leave it. Right over here, we can say, for instance, socket, and then we can actually say, let's emit, right? So right at the top over here, whenever we connect to our socket.io, we want to emit something, and use emit to send an information from the client end to the backend, right? And vice versa. So basically, use the emit to send an information. That is what I want to say. You use the emit to send an information, and you use the on to listen on an event. So we want to send an event to, for instance, maybe the front end or the back end. We use the emit, right? So I'm going to say the socket dot emit, for instance, greetings. Okay. So now these greetings that you see over here, is going to be treated as an event, as an event which is sent to the backend, right? So the backend, right over here, we are supposed to listen to that particular event. So you say socket dot on, and what event do we want to listen to? Greetings, right? So we want to listen on greetings. Now bear it in mind, right over here, we didn't send any data to the backend. So if you don't send any data to the backend, your callback function would always have is going to be empty. You're not going to have any parameter inside your callback function, right? So we're going to have our callback function, and then for instance we can say socket dot, and then we can use the broadcast, right? Now let me explain something to you. If for instance we do the io dot, for instance, emit, what that is actually going to do is it's actually going to emit to all the clients that are connected to the server, right? So for instance, if I do, for instance, greetings, right? So we want to emit greetings, but maybe we want to send a data out there, right? So let's say hello, right? What this is actually going to do is whenever a client connects, right, and we check that the client has connected, we send an event to the backend, right? And right at the backend, we are listening on a particular event that we are getting from the front end. So the event name is greetings from the front end. So we are listening on that particular event over here called greetings. And after we listen on that particular event, maybe we did something, we sent something, we updated our database or something like that, right? And now that we are done, if we use the IO to emit greetings back to the front end, what is actually going to happen is, if there are 1,000 people connected to our server, they are all going to receive these greetings. So you realize that if I go to, for instance, my let's go to the script and let's listen on that particular event, right? So I'm going to come over here and I'll do on. So now we want to listen on a particular event. And what event is that? Greetings. But bear it in mind, right at the back end, we are sending the greeting. We're actually emitting an event called greetings, but we are sending some data, right? So this is data. So right over here, I'm going to call this data. And for instance, I'll console log that particular data, right? Let's say data from backend. So if we save this and then, for instance, we refresh our page, we realize that we get data from socket.io, right? Data from backend socket.io, hello, right? And if we do the same thing for our Chrome and we listen on, we check the our console, we get that same message. So you realize that this message is actually sent to everyone. But let's say we don't actually want to send this message to everyone, right? I am the one that for instance, I'm sending the message, right? So I'm sending the message from my end and I want the person on the Chrome browser to receive it. If I don't want to also receive the same message that I'm sending, I have to use the broadcast, right? So the broadcast actually send information from the backend, but it makes sure that it does not send the same information to the client that send that particular information. Okay. So right over here we have the socket. Yes, socket the socket the broadcast, and then we have the emit. Then we can do greetings, and then we can say, for instance, hi, right? So I'm going to comment this out, and you realize that if we go back to our, how do you call it, our Chrome browser, we have this hi over there. But if we go to our Firefox browser, do we have the hi over there? Okay, let me start everything. And let me also start everything from here. So you realize that we have the hi, which is being represented over here because I'm sending from the Chrome browser. So we have the hi, which is represented at the Firefox browser. You realize that the Chrome browser is not getting the hi, right? So now, forgive me. So now what we're actually going to do is we're actually going to implement our chat, right? So over here we have our simple chat box or the body, and we have this input text which we are going to use to take our message, right? So over here what we are basically doing is we are saying, hey, let me uncomment this. We are saying that we want to listen on an event, right? We want to listen on key app. So whenever we press enter, we'll check the key code, and if the key code is 13, which means the input actually received the enter command, we want to grab the message or the value which is inside the target, right? And we'll create a div, and we are actually going to append that particular message inside that div, and then we'll add it to the body of the message, right? And once we are done with that, we'll set the value to empty string. So even before I even send this back to the backend, let me uncomment this, and then let's try from our end, right? So let me close this. So realize that if I say hi from here, I get this particular message, right? This is actually not sending to the Chrome browser yet. This is not sending to the Chrome browser. The Chrome browser can also send some message. I'm not receiving it, right? So I just want to show you the how do you call it, the CSS effect of what is happening. So now let's go back to our code. So right over here, when we are done with everything, we want to send this particular message that we got from the user to the backend, right? And we want to listen on this particular event at the backend. So we can come to the backend, which is the app.js, right? And right over here, we can say socket.on, sorry, and want to listen to this particular event, right? Send message, right? And the send message that we are listening on that particular event, it has a data, right? And the data is message, right? So that's the data. You realize that right over here, I'm sending some data, right? And what's the data? The data is the text that the user typed in their input text box, which is what I'm grabbing over here. So I'm sending this particular information to the backend, right? So that our socket.io will forward it to our client, right? So the client from Mozilla is sending a message to the client on Chrome, right? So at the app.js, we are grabbing that particular data, right? So when we come over here, we'll say, you know what, socket.broadcast, because we as the person that is sending the information, we don't want to receive that particular information because we are the ones sending it, right? And right at the right over here, we are actually appending that particular information we are getting to our message board, right, to our chat body. So we don't necessarily need to receive that information for ourselves because that will be redundant. So over here we'll say broadcast, we'll use the broadcast, and then we'll use the emit. And then let's see, we can change the name, but I like using the same name. But we can say, for instance, let's say response message, or let's say receive message, whatever, right? We can say receive message. And when we say receive message, we want to send the message that we are getting from the Firefox or to the client who is using the Chrome, okay? And I'm using Firefox and Chrome as an example just to tell you that if I am here, right, in one location and I want to chat with you in a different location, I'm calling my location, for instance, the Firefox, and I'm calling your location as the Chrome, right? So right now, what this is actually doing is it is sending this particular information, this event with this particular data to the client, which is receive message, right? So receive message. So if I come to our client end, I'll uncomment this and I'll change this from send to receive. So right now we are saying, hey, we want to receive some message, and that message that we are receiving, we want to append it to our message body, right? We want to append it to our message body. So if I go back, let me open the Firefox and the Chrome. Let me start all over again. So you realize that if I type hi, I get the message. Oh, what's going on? Okay. Um, Interesting. Interesting. Okay, let me check to make sure that I'm doing everything right. Yep. Okay. All right. So let me start all over again. Let me start all over again. Hi. Good. So now it's working. So I didn't save the file initially. So I sent hi from the Chrome browser. So I'm going to say hello from the Mozilla browser. And you realize that the information is going back and forth like that, right? I can see how are you doing, and I use different colors to for you to appreciate what is going on, right? So if I am the user at the Chrome browser and I'm sending a message, my message is supposed to show to me in a light green color, right? So let's say I'm doing good, and the recipient would see it in a white background. So basically, this is what you can use the socket.io to actually do. What I'm actually going to do in my next tutorial is actually show you how you can create, for instance, a private chat, because that is what I think most people want to do. So this is basically the basic, and I'm going to share this particular code, the repo, with you in the link. So check the link in the description. So check from the description to get a link to the GitHub repo. Thank you, and in the next tutorial we'll be talking about how to create or to send messages, like private messages, to each individual, right? This is more like a general um, chat application, right? So anyone that is hooked on your application can actually receive that message. But what if, for instance, you want to send the information to a particular individual without the others receiving that particular information? That is what our next tutorial is going to focus on. So thank you for watching this tutorial. Please make sure to subscribe, and if you have any critique on the delivery, make sure to comment, comment your concerns, and I'll address it in the next tutorial. So thank you for having the time to watch this tutorial, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.